Hello, this is My Sweet Mess, and welcome to my kitchen, where every week I make a mess trying new recipes in the pursuit of something sweet. This week I am excited to try a new to me recipe for Hostess with the Mostess Cake from Angie over at Bakerella, and I'll leave the original recipe link in the show notes below. I am excited to try out this recipe because I have a potluck coming up and I've been asked to make a dessert. I was looking for something that would serve a crowd and that would be tasty, and I think this cake is just the thing. This recipe calls for quite a few elements to be made and assembled: the cake itself, the cream filling, a ganache, and a swirl of icing. I've got a lot to do, so let's quit chit-chatting and get started with the mise en place. Mise en place is a French term which translates to putting in place or everything in its place. It's the process of preparing ingredients and tools before you get started cooking. Essentially, what I'm doing is taking a look at my ingredient list and recipe steps before I get started. I measure everything out and put the ingredients in their own bowls as opposed to measuring and dumping as I go. As I mentioned earlier, this recipe has a lot going on. Lots of elements, lots of ingredients, and a lot of duplicate ingredients. Because of all of the elements and life being busy, I need to make sure that I take my time with the mise en place and get organized to set myself up for success. While I'm measuring everything out, I am also putting ingredients on trays and on different counters so I can make sure to keep everything straight. My cake ingredients are going right in front of me, my cream filling ingredients are going in front of me on a tray, and so on and so forth. Some recipes, I'll admit, you can get away with skipping mise en place. This is not one of them. I'm going to take my time, check and recheck everything, and try to stay as organized as possible. Which means I'm going to do things that I normally would wait to do till later, like chopping the chocolate finely and heating water. Even though I'm not at that step in the recipe yet, I'm going to go ahead and take care of it now during mise en place. There will be quite a few bowls at the end of this bake, but with this much going on, it's worth doing the mise en place to make sure everything runs smoothly later. Once everything looks good to me, I can move on to prepping my equipment. In looking at the recipe steps, I will need to prepare a 12 by 18 inch sheet pan that has sides, and this is where we will bake the cake. In the sheet pan, I will grease the bottom and sides of the pan and line that with parchment paper. Next, I'll grease the parchment paper and dust that with cocoa. As I said, this is where I'll bake the cake, and by greasing and dusting the parchment paper, this should help make the cake come off the tray and the paper very, very easily. Now that everything is ready to go, let's get started with making the cake. In a bowl, I am going to whisk together the cocoa powder and the hot water and stir that until everything is well combined and the cocoa powder has completely dissolved. Once the hot water and cocoa powder has cooled to lukewarm, I will whisk in the buttermilk until well combined and then set that to the side for later. In another bowl, I will sift together the flour, baking soda, and salt. Once that is sifted together, I will set our dry ingredients to the side as well. Next, we will combine all of our sugars and butter. Using either an electric hand mixer or a stand mixer fitted with the paddle attachment, I will beat the butter, sugar, and light brown sugar together on medium until well combined. I will scrape down the sides as needed. Oh my gosh, that could have been so bad. Okay, well, it wasn't, and so I'm just going to make sure that my bowl is locked into place and we are good to move forward. Once the butter and sugars are well combined, I'm going to add in my eggs one at a time, making sure they are well combined before adding the next one. I will also go ahead and add the vanilla along with the final egg. Once the eggs and vanilla are well incorporated with our butter and sugars, I can move on to the next step. I will need the dry ingredients I sifted earlier, as well as the cocoa and buttermilk mixture from before. I've got my mixer reduced to a low speed and slowly add in the dry and then the wet ingredients, alternating between the two, starting and ending with dry. I might have to stop and scrape down the sides a few times, which is okay. That just helps to make sure everything is well incorporated. As I keep going, I'm noticing that the batter is pretty loose and it's making me a bit skeptical about the bake, but I am going to go ahead and just trust the process, so we'll just see how it goes in the end. Once everything is well incorporated, I can take the bowl off the mixer and give it a few more turns with the spatula just to make sure nothing was missed on the sides or the bottom of the bowl. Now that the batter looks good, I'll get my previously prepared pan and pour in the batter. Using my spatula to help coax the batter into the corners a little bit, and I'll be honest, this looks really good. Loose, but the color is nice and it smells fantastic. So I'll go ahead and just put this in my preheated 350 degree Fahrenheit oven for about 15 minutes or so, or until a toothpick comes out clean. Once my 15-ish minutes are up and my cake is out of the oven, I will admit it looks pretty darn good. This is, sorry if this bothers anyone, a very moist looking cake, but I'm gonna let it cool in the pan completely before I do anything with it. While the cake is cooling, I can go ahead and make my cream filling. I've got all of my ingredients here for easy access, using either an electric hand mixer like I have or a stand mixer. I've got my butter in the bowl and I have my powdered sugar that I will sift over the butter. Once all of the powdered sugar is all sifted, I'll use my mixer to cream together the butter and sugar until lightened. And I did, sort of. I started to, but as you know, or maybe you don't, powdered sugar is probably one of my least favorite ingredients to work with, especially after the pumpkin cupcake recipe. Link below for your convenience. And if 5 seconds of me using my mixer was a peek into the future, I am glad I stopped and broke a few rules and added everything all together, because I could already tell that it was going to be a huge mess if I continued on with just my powdered sugar and butter. So I went ahead and added everything together all at once-ish, and I hope that works out. So I've got my marshmallow cream in here, vanilla, and then the heavy cream, and I'll just go ahead and beat that with the butter and sugar until well incorporated and fluffy, and set that to the side once it looks good. And I am happy to say that my sanity and countertops are in decent shape. Now that my cream filling is done, let's go ahead and get the cooled cake that's been sitting on the counter for about an hour or so it's perfectly cooled and ready to be used. I need to cut a straight line down the center of the cake so that I have 2 sheets about 9 by 12 inches. I'm going to use my ruler. This is my cooking ruler, used only for things involving cooking. I will place it directly on my cake here and get the halfway mark and mark it with my knife. And then I will do the same thing 2 more times and then connect the dots to get as close to a perfect middle cut as I can. If you feel like you can eyeball this, then go for it. I just don't trust myself and want to make sure that I'm as accurate as possible, so I'm going to just use my ruler. Now that my cake is cut down the middle, I need to get the cake out of the tray. Thankfully, I can tip my sheet tray up and pull on the parchment paper to guide it out of the tray. And just like that, it is out of the tray and I can move on to my next step. Once the cake is out of my tray, I can take a pair of kitchen scissors and cut the parchment paper following that same middle cut line. I almost skipped this step, but I'm really glad I didn't. It makes it a lot easier to work with the 2 cakes later. Now that I have my 2 cakes separated, I can place one of the cakes into a 9 by 13 inch baking dish, like one of those glass casserole dishes, but I'm going to choose to actually put it on a cookie sheet flipped upside down because I want to be able to see the sides of my cake. When you flip your cake upside down, be careful. Don't be scared, but you're going to want to move with confidence and quickly. And of course, celebrate when you execute because this is nerve-wracking and I did it anyway and you're going to do it too. I know you can. Now that my cake is on my upside down cookie sheet, I can get my cream filling that I made earlier and get it in the piping bag, fitted with a large tip. I am not the most confident or experienced in piping, so I took a look at some videos by Claire Saffitz, and here's what I've learned. When you're filling a piping bag, use a cup so you can just flip your piping bag, the top of it inside out, and use that to go around your cup, and then that way you have something to work against as opposed to just fighting with an empty bag. And then the second tip is to flip your piping tip up before you put it in the cup, and that prevents any frosting or icing from leaking out the tip while you're filling the rest of the bag. And once all of the cream filling is in the piping bag without overfilling the bag, I'm going to just pipe some thick lines on top of the cake and then spread everything evenly with a spatula. I chose to do a border outline and then work my way into the middle of the cake, but dealer's choice on how you execute. As long as the cream filling is on top of the cake, then you're golden. Now that looks pretty good to me. On to the tricky part. My next step is I need to transfer my second layer of cake and place it on top of the cream filling. You can use either a rimless cookie sheet, or I just used a cutting board and slid the cake onto the cutting board and then flip. I'm going to just set my cake aside, and I've got still some ganache and icing to make. I've never made a ganache and do not have a double boiler, so I'm going to have to improvise a bit. Now I've got all of my ingredients here, including a heat-proof bowl. If you don't have a double boiler, a heat-proof glass bowl or a metal bowl like I have here is what you'll want to use. I also have a pot of simmering water, and I'm just going to set my heat-proof bowl over but not touching the simmering water to melt the chocolate and butter while stirring constantly. Basically what you're trying to do is get the steam from the hot water to melt your chocolate and butter, but you do not want to set your bowl into the water. That's too much heat too quickly for those ingredients. Alright, once it looks like most of the large pieces of chocolate have melted, I'm going to go ahead and add in my corn syrup and heavy cream and then stir together until everything is well incorporated and melted. Because I've never made a ganache before, and I was a little bit nervous about adding the corn syrup and then especially the heavy cream because it's cold, I went ahead and added the two ingredients separately. So I added the corn syrup first, made sure that that was very well combined with the butter and the chocolate, and then I added in the heavy cream. Alright, that looks pretty good to me, so I'm going to go ahead and take my bowl of ganache off of the double boiler, and as you can see, there's quite a bit of steam that was trapped in that pot, even though the pot hadn't been on a direct heat source in quite a while. So be careful when you're taking your bowl off of the double boiler. There's a lot of steam right there. I'm just going to give it a few more turns with my whisk just to make sure that there's no more lumps and everything looks smooth and shiny before I set it to the side and let it cool a little bit before putting it on top of the cake. While my ganache is cooling, I'm going to go ahead and make the frosting that's going to go on top of the ganache to make the signature swirls. To make the vanilla icing in a small bowl, I will stir together the powdered sugar, vanilla, and milk until smooth. Based on your preference, you can either add more powdered sugar or more milk to make the icing thicker or thinner. I found I needed a little bit more milk, So I went ahead and added that. And after a few more turns with my spatula, that looks like a pretty good consistency for piping on top of the cake. Once your ganache has cooled slightly, you're going to bring back over your layered cake and pour the ganache on top of your cake. So what I did is I let mine cool until the bottom of the bowl was warm but not hot. To be honest, I probably let mine set a little too long because, as you can see, as I'm pouring the ganache over the top of the cake, it's not spilling over the sides like I expected. Instead, I'm left with a thicker shell of ganache on top, which is fine. It's just not exactly what I anticipated, but I think it's still going to taste great. Either way, you need to let your ganache set up, so I'm going to just set it to the side for a little bit and then check on it here in about 10 or 15 minutes. Once the ganache is shiny and almost set, I'm going to cut the cake into 24 pieces, running the knife under hot water or cleaning it off with a kitchen towel between cuts. In hindsight, I should have cut the cake into 18 pieces versus 24 pieces because some of them were pretty small, and that also might be because the cake shifted a bit as I was cutting. Now, if you put your cake in the baking dish, that can't shift as easily because of the walls, so you may be safe, but I just would have probably preferred a little bit of a larger piece. Now that the ganache is set and the cake is cut, let's get started on piping some swirls on top of each cake. Again, to fill that piping bag, I'm going to use my cup with the piping bag ends flipped over the sides of the cup and the piping tip flipped up so that the icing does not spill out as I'm filling the bag. I'm still getting the hang of piping, but overall, I think you get the intention behind what the cake is supposed to look like, so I don't mind if some of them turn out less than perfect. Because I was taking this to a potluck and it was a new recipe, I wanted to try it before serving it to guests, so I snuck a corner piece, and I'll just get creative on how I stack the pieces so no one will know the difference. Next time I make this, I'll probably go ahead and use that baking dish and pour the ganache when it's warmer, just to see if I can get that coating on all sides of the cake. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a try, and no surprise here, it is wonderful. This is a very chocolatey cake. If you like a strong chocolate or a dark chocolate flavor, you are going to absolutely love this. If you have a summer party, a family gathering, really any event where kids or kids at heart will be, I think this is going to be a big hit. Alright, I'm off to go find a creative way to stack these cake slices so they won't know that I snuck one. Thank you all so much for being with me today. I hope you'll share what you learned with me in the comments below. And remember, trying new things is messy, but the results can be pretty sweet. Have a great rest of your day. Bye now.